So next is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the subcommittee on items that do not appear on today's agenda may do so. Please keep in mind that we will not take any action on your items, but we will surely note that. Do we have any hands out there, Michael?
We have Redora B810 from West Joseph. Do you want me to read part of the
I didn't hear.
We have Redora B810 from West Joseph raising their hand. Are they part of the meeting or are they?
Yes, please add her in. Thank you.
But other than that, we have no hands raised this time.
Okay. All right. Well, then why don't we go ahead to the first item, which is communications. Anything?
No communications, Chair.
How about the approval of the minutes from April 26th? Did everyone have a chance to look at them? Would someone like to make a motion for approval?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I reviewed them and I'd like to move we approve the minutes as submitted.
Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? If not, all in favor? Opposed? None. And let's move to the next item, which is new items for discussion. An update on per capita grant program to fund the basketball courts at City Park.
And Chair, I'll start and I'll turn it over to Kevin Thompson, our Assistant City Manager, and we're joined by John Moe, who is the engineer that the city retained to prepare the bid specs and also who prepared the cost estimates. This item was requested to be brought back for further discussion because the cost estimates, I think there was some concern about the high costs associated with the basketball courts. And there was also a request to take a look at whether Vintage Meadows could accommodate one of the two basketball courts that's proposed at City Park. So what staff has done is revised and updated the budget estimate, and John Moe from Moe Engineering is also here to discuss and review the court improvement costs with the subcommittee. So Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think Hector, can you hear us?
Yeah. Yes. Hi, everyone. Yes, I can hear you guys.
Hector, maybe we can start with the Vintage Meadows idea to put a second court there. I think Hector went out and did some measurements. What'd you find, Hector?
Yeah. So right after that last meeting in our last discussion, the following day, I went over to Vintage Meadows and I took the sketch provided by John Moe and just went out there and took some measurements and determined that right next to the existing basketball court, there's just not enough room to accommodate a second basketball court. There wasn't enough room, and there's just also a lot of different types of utilities, underground utilities that we would have to, there would be a challenge to relocate. So that's what I found.
Yeah, and then as David said, based on the previous engineer's estimate, we had John sort of sharpen the pencil, and that's what you have before you on this new spreadsheet. So John, I don't know if you want to just run down what you come up with for this second proposal. Just give us a little background on it. You're on mute, John.
How about now? You hear
Yeah,
me
we
okay?
can hear you. Yep.
Yeah, so we took a look at the budget estimate that we prepared. We sent it out to a couple of contractors, and one item in particular that was a little bit high was our mobilization. So we reduced mobilization. Let's see, I have to switch between screens. We took about 15,000 out of that. There, we had also taken some items completely out as alternate bid items to lower the budget so that we could have like kind of a base bid of just the necessary items for the court. Kevin, we talked to you about it, and I think Hector as well. Which items could we take out that could help lower that base, what I'm calling the base bid estimate, and we reduced it from, it was originally 412,000 for a budget estimate, and it's now around 300,000 or just over 300,000. But there have been a few items, removed. One was a storm drain relocation. I don't know if that's absolutely necessary. We didn't want to build the court over the top of the storm drain, so we relocated the storm drain outside of the footprint of the basketball court. There were some other drainage improvements associated with that, a catch basin and trench drains. Separate from that, there's also the chain link fencing that has been removed from the base bid, and the fencing would help keep the balls in the court while you're playing, and that might be an improvement that could be done after the fact or some other phase of the project. We also had a colored slurry seal over the court. That doesn't have to happen. It would be a nice amenity, but it's another $15,000. And then also lighting. So the lights themselves were eliminated. So those are the big items that were taken out of the base bid, that reduced it from below 400,000 to around 300,000. And I think that's the summary of it, Kevin.
Yeah, and just a reminder, we do have 177,000 from the state as part of the per capita, and which we had to contribute. What was it, 20%, David? We as a 20% match, that got us up to, I think, 212. But as you can see, it's coming in higher. So this is for two courts, right, John? Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, 2 high school sized courts.
Yeah, so they're really nice courts. I mean, we could go with the 302, or we can, bring it down to 1 court. It's up to your guys' direction, but we do have the 177 waiting.
So the 302 is for 2 courts?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it fair to say that if we only did 1 court, we have that?
John, what do you think?
I couldn't hear that.
I'm sorry, John. If we were to select only 1 court, as opposed to 2 for 302,000, what ballpark would the price be for 1 court?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it'd be half, but it's hard to say because of mobilization, and you're already out there there's concrete work as well. I don't think it would be half, but I don't know if it's 3/4 or 2/3 perhaps of that.
Okay, well, I don't even know why I asked that, because I prefer to have 2. But before I ask Councilman Paula if he has any questions, if we can go back to item number 1, the 18-inch storm drain replacement. So what happens to that storm drain? Is it just going to be underneath the cement pad?
Right, it'd be under a portion of the basketball court, the newly built court, or the new facility. And it could last there. There are other alternatives. We might be able to line that pipe. I think at some point I guess the potential is it could be a liability to the structure itself if that pipe were to collapse. I think it's an older pipe. We could take a little more look. We could video that pipe to see what condition it's in. So that could be investigated a little further to see whether or not we can leave it in place and not relocate that.
Yeah, my gut reaction is to move it. With our luck, a month after we build the thing, we'll have to dig it up again and have egg on that face. But Vanessa, what are your thoughts on that?
As long as it, passes design. I mean, it's a longer stretch. You get a little more head loss through the bends, depending on what the realignment looks like. As long as it passes, the appropriate design storm, I support relocating the line.
And Chair, if I can just real quick, for you, Councilmember Paula, these alternate bid items, the way those traditionally work for bidding is that they're all listed in the bid package, and that way a bidder will provide costing for those. What we're not required to do is to necessarily include them in the construction contract. So that gives us a little bit of flexibility if we list them as alternates, and we can add them depending on where where we stand from a budgetary perspective, once we actually know the physical bid. So I kind of like that in the sense that you have real numbers, but you have your base bid, which is really to carry out the project, but you've got these additional items. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility in adding these menu items that, we can say, well, that's important because we want to get that done and we can afford it. And so, you could, if the bids came in lower, for example, you might be able to add more bid items. So you can say, well, we'd really like to put the fence in because that makes sense, or do the slurry seal. But doing it as bid items kind of gives you that ability to add those to the construction contract. So it doesn't mean that they're out per se. It just means we're bidding them as add alternates for the purposes of flexibility during the bidding process.
Councilmember Paulo?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of quick questions. First of all, I support doing both reports, but with that said, I just want clarification on the grant that we're getting from the state, the 20% match. If we were to reduce the number of reports, would that reduce the amount of grant funding received?
I think that the project needs to be $212,000 to kind of meet what our grant.
Contingent on 2 points.
No, it's not. The description for the grant was pretty generic in that we were going to redo the courts at Second Street Park.
No, thank you. I just wanted to be clear
Yeah.
on that. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I strongly support moving forward with the 2 courts. I think it's short-sighted at this point to reduce it. We need the courts. We've been talking about this for many, many years. We know the students and the kids that play basketball. There's a need, and we have to start trying to address that need. I'd be more inclined to move forward with the entire package to figure out how we're going to pay for it. Let the city staff kind of punch the numbers, and I like the alternate process to go over that alternate bid. And maybe some of these things, like for instance, the fencing, we can put in so it's ready for fence, but maybe not actually do the fence this year, do it next year, and phase it in over time. Those kinds of things in an effort to reduce the number. If we need to do that, not eliminate it, but do it and then phase in the things that we can add in a year, 2 years, 3 years as we move forward. But I think it'd be real short-sighted to reduce it. We went through this exercise with Vintage Meadows, and we had it set for 2 courts, and we did, because of funding, reduce it, and now it's kind of been, so where we are again. So I think I support moving forward with this.
And the balance would come out of the Committee Act funds, or we keep grabbing money out of those Committee Act funds. Yeah, I don't know how much we have left.
After all 3 projects, the restroom, the pickleball, and this, I think it's around I want to say around 250 will be left. We do have some projects coming in that will help build that up a little bit more, the Baumgartner and the Alexander Valley Apartments. It won't be back to where it was, but it'll start building.
Again, I've always said we're not collecting the money as a savings account. We're collecting to provide services to the community and the recreation side, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. And it's a big number, and so we have to accumulate the funds, and then it costs a big number to implement. So I think this is good. Pickleball, basketball, these courts, the restroom projects. So I think they're all.
I agree with that. I'd like to see us go ahead and move forward and have the Quimby Act fund for the balance. Let's just get it done.
Okay.
So just to summarize the action is go ahead and move forward, include the alternate bid items in the bid package as alternate items, and we'll ultimately put these out to bid to receive formal construction cost estimates. And when we get that, we can bring that either back here or bring it to council, and we'll propose to close fund the project first and foremost with the grants funds that we received, and then the remainder, which will probably be the park and rec impact fees.
So what do you think the timeline for that is? Without curiosity, before it comes to full city council
Maybe John
for approval?
or John or Hector, you have well, I think you need to do construction drawings and the bid.
Right, we haven't, so we've got preliminary plans. We would have to finish the plans and then advertise for construction. Finishing the plans a couple of months and advertising another month. So you're at least 3 months out.
And
I just want to see it be approved by the end of the year and ready to go.
just Hector here, just a couple of things, and we can talk offline, John. Just one thing we need to look in there on the alternative bids is to really look into that storm drain, at least maybe perform some type of inspection to see what kind of shape that is. And then just for the lighting part of thing, maybe there's enough money in there, depending on when the bid comes back, to see if we can at least bring the conduits with power out to where we're planning on putting installing lights in the future. So if in the future we can come up with some funding, then it's right there and we don't have to dig up the parking lot.
Right. Yeah, sounds good. We have separate conduits and pull boxes for future lights.
Thank you.
Well, the only thing that I probably not agree with you on is not relocating the storm drain. You know, I just think if we leave it where it is, it's gonna come back and bite us later. And
Right.
I think we just go and move it now for 15,000 as opposed to, you know, having to dig up the whole court later on.
So if I understand right, I mean, Chair, all these alternate bid items will be part of the bid packet. Then we'll have a chance to review it, talk more in depth about it. Because I agree. I really think there's certain things we don't want to, we don't want to go back behind it. There may be things like Hector pointed out, is if we can't, for whatever reason, move forward with the lights today, we definitely want to run the conduit, have it all prepped. So when we get to that, hopefully we can do it all in one project. That would be cool. But if we have to start tweaking it, we want to make sure as we move forward, everything's in place to expand it.
I just want to kind of note here that, you know, drainage, it comes as a whole packet. And so I would suggest it's not just bid add item 1, it's 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Probably collectively. I'm assuming, John, that all the trench grades and the drain inlets are incidental to the relocated
Correct. Yes.
membrane. And I would also advocate for putting those in the base bid. I totally appreciate alternate bid items, but you know, you need to base the award on something. And if you base it on the lowest bid for the base bid, adding some alternates, you know, contractors play games with the way that they price things. And so adding certain alternates may not result in a lowest bid. So I like, you know, projects to have a very comprehensive base bid and the alternates be actually truly alternates.
Okay.
I support that as well. I don't think that should be an alternate. That needs to happen irregardless. So I think 1, 2, and 3 should be part of the base bid.
Okay, John?
Yeah, I understand that. Yes.
Eric, anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Okay, thank you.
Hector, anything else?
Vice Mayor, no, that's great. I'm glad that we had a chance to discuss these items. I know once we complete this project, the community is going to be thrilled and very happy with this project. I know that.
It's a well-used facility there, so. Okay, well, why don't we move on to item number B, water supply update and drought response.
All right, well, thank you, Chair. I just want to introduce Redora Bigotan. She's been before the subcommittee before to provide updates on this ongoing process that we refer to as the Russian River Drought Response Group. We are currently planning on bringing forward a presentation to council with proposed action to consider a resolution to whether to authorize city staff to enter into this voluntary drought agreement. There's been, you know, since our last meeting, this has been a very iterative process. with changes occurring, it seems like weekly, Redora. And there's also some developments that may affect this process related to PG&E. So with that said, Redora has been participating in the Monday meetings, following it very closely. Likewise, keeping both myself and Vanessa updated, as well as our city attorney team, in so much as we want to make sure that we're addressing our position with senior water rights. So, Redora, if you want to go ahead and give a kind of summary overview on where it's been and the decision kind of matrix that we will be presenting to council at their January 8th meeting.
Thank you, David. Good afternoon, Vice Mayor Walter and Council Member Paula. So since our last meeting, there are 3 important things that have happened, and I wanted to share that with you. Early in May, the state approved emergency conservation regulation, which essentially means potential for curtailment orders for users off the Russian River. And there's a provision in that regulation that would provide exception for users who enter a voluntary conservation agreement or water sharing agreement for the Russian River. So that particular provision refers to the voluntary water sharing agreement that the Russian River Drought Response Group has been working on for these several months. So that's one event. This next event is that the Russian River Drought Response Group worked really hard to actually substantially complete an agreement, and legal counsel have reviewed it and provided their comments. Staff is working on an analysis to understand what that means for the city. An important provision in there that we asked to be included is that the city's maximum water conservation would be 20% based on the average 2017 to 2019 May to September diversions. So that is making it in the final version of the agreement. But we need to understand what that really means because of the next event that that occurred the following week. But before I go into that, I just wanted to share the agreement is planned to be presented to the state water board on June 7, and then it will also be brought to city council June 8. Enrollment in the program will open this week and ends on June 20. It includes an exit provision so that once we understand what the final conservation amounts are and it's not favorable to the city can decide to exit out of the agreement if it decided to participate and enrolled in the agreement. So the third event that's kind of important, and that's kind of having the Drought Response Group Steering Committee really think about how this program would work, is that PG&E filed a variance for the flows. The variance is with the, let me see, I don't want to get this wrong, with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC. And that variance pretty much means deeper cuts to the Russian River flows. And they're requesting release of 5 CFS to 25 CFS of minimum in-stream flows during the dry season. And this is because This is in response to the flow that the National Marine Fisheries Service needs for the Eel River to maintain temperature conditions for steelhead salmon. The lower end could make the water sharing program not viable. Essentially, everyone would be would have minimum water supply. However, at 25 CFS, which is the higher end of their variance request, the city would have to conserve 20% of the 2017 to 2019 dry season. And again, some analysis is going on right now to understand what that means for the city. And we'll be going over that with city staff later on this week. But the agreement is structured so that if the program is not viable, everyone falls back to what the state water board orders would be and emergency regulations would be. So that means that potential curtailment and minimum water for human health and safety for the city. But when it's viable, it means a little bit more water for the city. And so that analysis is going on right now. And at this point, I'm not yet ready to release what we're finding. But I think I will have something ready for David to take a look at a little bit later in the week. But again, the agreement could be favorable for the city as an alternative to the minimum human health and safety needs. And we'll bring that to the June 8th City Council meeting.
So I think just again, a quick summary is, we fully expected that the state board was going to take action because of the ongoing drought, to continue the curtailment. And the way they've done that is they've revised their 2021 emergency regulations to provide this off-ramp for this voluntary water sharing agreement process. And they also did some other technical refinements that they may have missed, or just to kind of address some of the deficiencies in the original curtailment. That curtailment order originally restricted the city to the base minimum health and safety requirements are 55 gallons per person per day. We subsequently filed, after a lot of work, we filed a petition with the state board saying, we really need a minimum. I think it's 104 GPCD. They agreed to that. So that's kind of our baseline. We subsequently filed another petition for what we call non-consumptive uses. And those were things for addressing the water that we use at the water plant in the treatment process, and things, again, that are tied to health and safety issues like water in our hydrants. So there's an exception that's provided for that. So we got an additional about 4 to 5 GPCD to tag on to that 104. So that gets us up to between 109 and 110 GPCD, given those two uses. So part of the analysis that Redora is looking at is the provision in the this voluntary water sharing program is 20% reduction based on our average of water use for that 3-year period, 2017, 18, and 19. And what it looks like, at least right now, and I know there's more number crunching that's being done, is that it would put us at a higher level than what we would find under curtailment. So from that perspective, it appears it could be beneficial to participate. obviously we want to look at that and make sure that that's the case. And so we can be in a position to share that with council and say, yes, you know, this is maybe a potentially preferred alternative to curtailment. But obviously with this latest news that PG&E has filed this flow variance, again, depending on where it lands, if it lands at the kind of the upper range of their flow change, you know, we're kind of back, I think, to this 20%, we're still in good shape. If it gets less than that, then, you know, we'll have to determine whether, you know, at what point does it make sense for us to just follow our existing curtailment order and the restrictions. So the other kind of component to this is I like that they have provided for us an exit clause. So it seems like it's reduced some risk for us in terms of if we enter it and we go, this is not really a feasible alternative, we can get out. But what they've also said is if you want to opt in, you have to do it fairly quickly, right, Redora?
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it's they've given us a deadline.
Of June 24 enrollment, so that they can calculate what the conservation thresholds are for all the participants of the program. And then they'll release that very shortly thereafter. And then the city would have, I believe, 10 days to make a decision to stay or to exit. The thing I wanted to add is, you know, the PG&E variance requests have really complicated things, and they're looking for this agreement to be adapted to these situations that come up. You know, situations seem to change almost on a weekly basis. And the last discussion is that they would add a provision in the agreement or in the resolution adopting this agreement that says the program would be in effect only when it's viable. And being viable means that pre-1914 water rights holders and pre-1949 and 1949 water rights holders aren't curtailed. So if these more senior water rights holders are curtailed, the program would not be in effect. It would only be in effect when essentially the senior water rights holders are not curtailed and can contribute to the water savings, the 20% conservation. So they still would like, the Russian River Drought Response Steering Committee would still like to keep moving forward with the agreement so that as situation changes and participants can conserve water and save and share, they would like to implement it so that the region can learn from it for future years.
Right. So one of the, you know, we're going to bring forward of course, part of the presentation is an overview of the action in seeking council's direction on whether to participate in the agreement. So that will be, you know, a key decision point for council. You know, some other components here, I think, is this flow variance filed by PG&E with FERC. It's a federal agency. You know, there is interest, I think, Redora, from the group of maybe signing, whether we'd be interested in signing on to a letter, maybe either advocating for if they grant the flow variance, you know, maybe more at the higher range,
Yes.
Or possibly maybe considering not granting it at all, you know, because it is within their authority to grant the flow variance. And the reason it's FERC is related to this pipeline is tied to the dam and the energy producing systems that are, were granted by FERC as the regulatory entity to PG&E to be able to divert the flows and generate electricity or hydropower. So that's why it's with FERC. So that will be kind of the other component to this is whether we want to participate in some kind of letter, providing some recommendation relative to this request has been submitted. So,
Is there a time on this variance hearing, or do we know that?
Let's see, I made note of when, I think the comment letters are needed. Thought I wrote it down. Next week, and I can get back to you on that, but the group would like to complete a letter to send out next week. To FERC.
Any questions?
Well, I don't have any real questions. It's a lot of information. It's very hard to absorb it all and put it in some kind of what's the best decision to make for the city and for the people that we represent. And I'm just thinking it would be helpful if there's a way to put, maybe as you make the presentation, have some kind of like a chart, a flow chart that shows how it is, what it would look like, and how this all fits. So you kind of have a snapshot review, recognizing there is a process to get out of it if it goes astray. So I think it would be helpful to kind of, not just for us, but for the community everybody's gonna have a lot of questions on this. So I just wanted to throw that down as a thought. It would be very helpful to have something that we can kind of visually see. Thank you.
Darren, anything on your end that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments, but I'm actually in the middle of a major SCADA failure at the moment. So I'm elbows deep in the SCADA cabinet, switching out communications gear.
Okay, well, we'll just talk to David about those questions that you had. Okay.
Definitely will do. And Redora and I have been working very close on this, and she keeps me very well informed. So, we're looking pretty good on this topic. But I'll try to get back to you guys or get back to the meeting here in a little bit. I got to get the plant back up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, then why don't we go ahead and move on to number C?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So an update on the city grant application submitted to the Department of Water.
Okay, so as this committee is well aware, we received notice from the California Department of Water Resources that we were successful in our grant application was awarded, and they have provided a draft agreement to both Vanessa and I for review. I have sent that to our city attorney. We did get draft comments back, and we're reviewing those, and we'll be providing those updates to DWR for their consideration. And I think what they're looking for us too, which is part of our internal process, is the timing of how we're going to carry out those projects, so that can be built into the grant application, because I think they want us to be able to mirror the funding with how we're going to bring those projects forward. So that's a work in progress. So it's continuing, and the plan would be to get that agreement executed and then start that, because I think the time frame started when the application was accepted. So the clock's already ticking, but we're going to continue to move that forward. And we're also been one of the things that was discussed during the budget workshop is we're looking very carefully, because there's really 4 distinct projects within the grant, as how, we have a 3-year time window to carry it out. How are we going to do the 4 projects, and how those tie to the budget. So that's what Vanessa's provided some very good feedback, and we've been talking with Darren on the timeline for each of those efforts, so that we look at it both from a timeline to carry it out, but also the revenue and expenditures for those efforts. So we'll continue to develop the timeline for the various projects, and I think ideally we'll be in a position to we'll want to present that, I think, here, so that there's a clear understanding of what our objective is relative to carrying out the grant.
Just a quick question. Is there any indication whether there's a backlog to getting the meters that we want to? What's the timeline? It'd be a shame to put in for X number, say they're 9 months out to the year out. So that would be a concern I have.
Yeah, that's a great question, Councilmember Paula, and I think maybe in our favor, we've been, predating this grant, we had been working on a meter project with, as part of what's called the turnkey program with PG&E. And so one of the things we were able to do over just the last few weeks is implement the testing program. So these new meters, they did indicate there is some supply chain issues with them, but they were able to at least procure the number we needed to do the testing. But we'll have to check on the timeline. Again, the assumption has been all along we're going to, council has said, we think they authorized the change order to do this testing work, and that we're going to be moving forward. So, we'll try to do our best to kind of lock in those meters, because again, the goal was really to try to do one complete project for the whole city and just get it done. And just for reference, the grant, the way the funding was kind of broken out was the DWR grant would pay about half, right, Vanessa? And so we're really looking to, if we want to meld these procurement processes, if we can do the turnkey program, do them 100%, and which some of that was going to be, it was going to be kind of an on-bill financing program. So through the additional revenue, through some of the savings, pay for those meters. But we can pay that principal down with the grant to enable that project to move forward quickly. That's what we're hoping for. Fingers crossed that we meet all the procurement requirements. So we've got 2 different ways we're approaching this. One is using, because we had been working on the turnkey program before we got the grant, but now we got this grant, so hopefully it will help us fund it, which would be all the better. That's our goal, but we'll check on kind of the timing, with the understanding that, our commitment is to move forward. If there's any opportunities to, pre-order or anything like that, to get it in the queue, we definitely want to do that. But so far, the partners that we've been working with through Turnkey have been very good. They've been on target, and so we're hoping
they're in town the last few weeks, testing, looking at meters and getting a count on them. We get a report every week, and looking for radio sites, on city-owned locations up on the ridge. So yeah, we can marry these two. It's gonna be great.
Now, along with that, I think at the last meeting you had mentioned, Vanessa, some other inventory shortages of equipment maybe.
I think the struggle is real, staff and, products, the supply chain issues are definitely alive and real. Kind of thinking about the various, issues related to this. I really maximize, as far as the 4 projects, I think the AMI, the smart meter project, is probably the most shovel-ready of all of them. So in theory, that could get implemented first, barring these supply chain issues. I did maximize, to the maximum extent possible, all of the project's progress. I back calculated from the absolute due date for the grant to meet the grant requirements, gave us a 3-month buffer, and kind of anticipated that as the completion date. So I think we have a buffer in there. If the issues go beyond a year or two, that could be a bust. But then that could that could shake out into the potential to ask forgiveness, and these are the issues we're running into. I don't know how the state would see that, but I think we've got plenty of time. I think the short story is plenty of time, and this is baked into both your engineering budget and the infrastructure budgets for the upcoming fiscal years.
And we won't be the only city that's having shortage problems.
Correct.
So the state hopefully would make some changes to the timeline for them.
Yeah, and the one of the other critical components I was just thinking of that because Darren mentioned that he's working on the SCADA system. I think that's we have an existing vendor that we've historically worked with, ArcSign, that's done a lot of our design work on our system. So I'm hoping that that's also something that we'll be able to move forward fairly quickly, because a lot of that work is really computer programming. There is some equipment that goes out in the field, of course, but a big part of that exercise is actually computer programming, and so it's a kind of a office exercise to a certain extent, but there are systems that need to be implemented with them to facilitate the additional improvements to SCADA for reading, monitoring levels and things like that. So there is equipment with it. I don't want to underscore that, but I'm hoping that's also something that can move forward.
I think with the SCADA and the well projects, there are some design elements that need to happen. A lot less so for the meter project.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that particular subject, why don't we move on to the Sonoma County Vision Zero Action Plan.
Okay, in your on the online packet, there is a direct link if you want to pull it up. This has been a planning effort that's been in process now for at least 2 years. It was initially being led up primarily by the Sonoma County Department of Public Health, and since then the Sonoma County Transportation Authority has also kind of led up the adoption of the plan by the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors. So the board has adopted the plan, and during that planning process, we as staff had quite a bit of input. It was really about this is kind of a national effort to reduce fatalities related to vehicles and traffic. And so, thus the name of the plan, Vision Zero, is to reduce fatalities to zero. And it was an effort to look at each city and what are the key areas where there are concerns about traffic fatalities, traffic accidents, crash data, and so forth. And so we've been giving you updates as they've made progress on the plan, since this planning effort was initiated. And at this point, given the adoption by the board, they're asking all the cities now to take action to adopt the plan. I think the goal being, of course, that SCTA can point to it being a county-wide adopted plan, and use it as a tool to obtain additional funding. I think that's the critical goal, is not necessarily to serve as a regulatory document per se, but to be able to apply for additional funds for some of the traffic safety improvements that would benefit Sonoma County as a whole, there hasn't been a lot of discussion specifically how where grant funds would be directed or any of that. But I think where we're at on this is that with the support of this subcommittee, unless you want to take more time, review it and go through it, to bring it forward with a presentation for council's consideration, we could, it could be a simple, put it on consent and adopt it, or if you want something more, more detailed in terms of an overview plan, or, any other details that you think might be important for council's consideration of this planning document. I'm pretty certain our SCTA board member has seen the presentation and ultimately did go to the chair. You'd often watch the board meetings if you saw this item come up. So that's kind of where we're at, and we just want to make sure if we bring it forward, we receive your input on how you'd like it to be brought forward, whether it's a consent item or if you want, more formal presentation, or whether you would want it to be here, talk more about it.
Well, I'm looking at page 45 of the presentation online, and I know Councilmember Powell's going to be happy because they're talking about intersections without striping and then with striping. And so I wonder if there's going to be any grant money available to do some of the striping that we're looking to do. Because, I can only imagine the dollar amount that the county spent for this survey and to put this thing out. And that now they want all of the cities to jump on board. And I think it's, from what I see, it's a good program. But the question is, how does the city of Cloverdale implement some of these suggestions? So that's always the challenge.
So I do have one question, and it's probably a legal question that we want Jose's office to weigh into, but the plan. Obviously, we don't have the funding to implement every aspect of the plan.
Right.
What does that put us in? What positions that put the city in? Say a fatality or a major accident, and our plan that we put out. Of course, funding, my experience with courts, funding is never a legitimate reason for not doing something. That aside, safety typically should be first. So, I think it's great. I support putting it under consent, but I would want to move forward to make sure that our adoption is done in a way that as funding becomes available, the city will make every effort to implement these safety things. But wouldn't want to set us up where we could have this plan used against us. So that would be my.
But was there any mention as far as what type of funding, or is it just broadly set funding?
Yeah, I think the program offers, broad level of, there's no specific funding. There's a lot of programs now focused on traffic.
Goal focused
plan
to move forward, but again, as money becomes available, that's not always available.
Right. But we could certainly check to determine, what the potential, liability concerns are with the county. With the city.
The language we put in as we adopted, I think that's probably how we adopt it and conditions we put down. So this way, if it was ever used in litigation, we would have how it's intended.
So you're suggesting that
I just think we should make sure that Jose's office at least looks at it from a liability standpoint. If we adopt this plan and we don't implement every aspect because of funding, what position that puts in if something happens.
so this came out March 2022. Is there a wish date that the county has to get everybody on board?
I don't know. I haven't heard.
No.
They initially kind of rolled it out and said, can each city just accept it? And I think after their consultation with funding agencies, I think that they took the tack. It'd be great if everybody adopted it. And we do have a similar plan where we've done that, and that's the comprehensive bicycle master plan. And it's kind of similar in the sense that we can use that for as a tool to get funding. And we did that with the with our treadway signalization project. Because it was in the bicycle master plan, with not a big contribution, but we got awarded $120,000 in TDA Article 3 funds for the green bike lanes. So little things like that. Because it was consistent with the bicycle master plan, our grant application was successful, and you know, we were provided, you know, a small grant to help cover some of those costs that we incurred with the project. So I see this as kind of similar as you know, having a countywide adopted plan. It's something we can point to and show that it's part of a countywide effort if we're doing some improvements. You know, I know that this committee is really interested in looking at traffic safety improvements at the Healdsburg Cloverdale Boulevard intersection, and that's an area where there's been, you know, some fatalities. So it may avail us to some funding.
Well, I think something this important. I'm not too comfortable putting it on the consent calendar. I think council members need to be able to ask questions. So many times something like this goes on the consent calendar, and it's, who knows if it's ever really read or everything is explained to the council members what they can and can't do. Is there anyone from the county who comes out and gives a slide presentation or that should be done?
We can ask. We can follow up with SCTA whether we can. You know, we're probably due for an update from Suzanne Smith. We haven't had her up for a while, so we can certainly talk to whether it's Suzanne or a member of her staff.
Yeah, and you know, it's my understanding that they do not have funds currently to do the sort of one-on-one outreaches.
So you think the answer is going to be no?
I suspect the answer is going to be no, at least for now. You know, I think, you know, maybe when next fiscal year shakes out, that could be a different answer. But at a recent public work directors meeting, they talked about, you know, this plan, local road safety plan. And I think the benefit to the city is, you know, they right out of the gate on the funding applications, it's like, do you have, have you adopted a regional plan? If not, do you have a city specific plan? And if the answer is no, you know, it's right out of the gate, you're not eligible for these kind of road funds. And so, you know, there's the benefit, and it's either, you know, going with the county plan or do a specific city plan, or, you know, you can get really complicated and adopt part of this plan and whatever, you know.
Well, what do you think? Consent calendar?
Yes, you know, I'm very comfortable with it. You know, again, my only concern, I don't want to use death here, but, you know, when it talks about create safe speeds, that's kind of like, I look at it as an action item. We really should do that sooner than later. You know, create a culture of safety. Most of these are pretty subjective, but when we get into maintaining safe streets, those are things that I think cities and counties have a responsibility to do regardless of the plan. So the plan, if that's our plan, I guess I want to make sure that it's worded that we're going to do that to the best of our ability with our resources. And again, can't spend money we don't have, but it's certainly need a plan and work at it. So I'm comfortable putting it on as long as we adopt it, it's worded correctly. So it puts us in it.
So then if Jose blesses it with a tagline, you know.
Or the way, whatever resolution comes across to adopt it, it's worded in such a way that it's, you know, it clarifies what our plan is for the plan.
You okay with that?
That's a clear direction. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. book this. Oh, Mike, I'm sorry, I haven't been asking you if anybody has any hand raised out there, but,
As of right now, there are no members of the public present.
okay. So why don't we move on to, update on, audio walk, on First Street and City Street.
Yeah, thank you. This, again, just background, were control systems that were ordered to ensure that we are compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We received a request for the audio crosswalk controls. The purchase order has been executed, and we're just still within the lead time for our traffic consultants to receive those and install them. So it's just at this point, we're just waiting to receive those control systems, and then once they're received, I think they said they'll be about 2 weeks to get them installed. So we're just at this point, we're just waiting.
Do you have anything?
No, that's good, thank you.
How about, discussion for, citywide street striping plan?
Yeah, something kind of exciting to share with the subcommittee. You know, we've talked about a scope of work to do a comprehensive the street striping plan, and I still think that's a valuable effort. But we were awarded not directly but indirectly funds from MTC to do a comprehensive pavement survey. I think the subcommittee members have brought forward the report that is issued by MTC really on an annual basis, identifying the pavement condition index. In response to that, MTC is funding a firm to do pavement assessments for a number of cities, and so we got signed up, and we agreed to engage in this effort. So both Vanessa and I sat on the kickoff call with the consultant that was hired by MTC. We had to pay a small amount of the contract, which was $3,000. We did that with our existing street budget. And starting this June, there's going to be the firm is going to be out there doing a comprehensive assessment. According to them, their report will identify what measures the city can take to improve that PCI. So there'll be presumably, I haven't seen what a template looks like, but there'll be recommendations. If you do this, it'll raise your score. If you do, X, Y, Z. One of the things we asked, because they said, is there anything we can do as part of this to help you out? And we said, well, it'd be really ideal if you could also assess the striping when you're out there doing this pavement reporting. So we're going to provide some basic criteria around striping that then can go along. So we have both, at least some, I don't know if it'll be how detailed it will be on the striping, because their focus really is on the asphalt conditions, but at least having some information about the condition of striping tied to when they're out there assessing the asphalt will be really good. And they at least said they would do that. They would agree to
For no additional charge.
right. So we held our kickoff meeting week before last, which was kind of their initial portion of their scope of work. Task one was to have that kickoff meeting, walk through the work plan, and I signed off on that. So we're going to be beginning really the key next steps of actually them doing the assessment. I think they said they're going to start in June. I think it was.
For the physical observation of the roads, it was very loose, sometime between June and October. They would let us know a little bit later, but they thought they would hit Cloverdale in the earlier stretch of that.
Right, and this firm happens to be out of Oregon. They're doing a number of Bay Area cities. So I think that's where they're kind of scheduling us in. We, of course, let them know that it could be pretty hot during the summer months here. And one of the pavement engineers said, he grew up in Ukiah, so he's very familiar with hot temperatures. We did provide feedback that we think it's important because they're going to be out walking and driving, that they wear identifiable clothing, and we'll as the time gets closer, we'll put something in the newsletter, keep council informed. So if they're seeing someone driving around in neighborhoods, we know who it is and what they're doing. So
It's important because I told you a story. People checking the water meters along. Look, I saw a guy and I did call the police to say, I don't know what's going on. These things checking, they're doing something. I mean, that's should know.
yeah.
Just looking at it. Got reassured after the police contacted them. But they were in personal car, personal clothes, walking around, moving and stuff. And
Right.
of course, vandalism on the upper, that's a concern about that. Anyway.
Well, there'll be more updates on this. I thought it's really great. I think that MTC is tried to help cities that are experiencing, are on that list that have a lower score for their PCI, and so I'll be excited to see what they come up with and what the recommendations are.
So if they start the program between June and October, kind of where you fit into the cities that they're going to review, any timeline after they complete before we actually get them report?
I don't recall, Vanessa. I know that they seem like they're really committed to getting this process done as quickly as possible, but I didn't get a sense exactly how long.
Yeah, I think as they move forward, we can, get a better schedule from them and keep you guys informed about what that looks like.
And how, if at all, this is going to tie in the Berkeley folks that are coming up to check our intersection, especially as it relates to the striping, and is there any tie-in there?
Well, they're definitely related, because they are both the topics deal with streets. One is kind of different in terms of scope. This firm that's going to do the pavement is really citywide. The work that was done with the Safe Trek group from UC Berkeley really is a more focused effort, really looking at the Oste Road segment between First Street and Citrus Fair Boulevard and Citrus Fair. Though I think part of that we did express that there was a traffic safety concern around the Healdsburg Avenue Boulevard intersection, and the engineer, because they pay for an engineering team to come out, actually sketched up a suggested solution for us, and that's going to be part. My takeaway was that that's going to be part of their recommendation. Well, they're very careful because they don't. Again, they're providing this to the service under grant, so they're very careful to say, we're not giving you recommendations, we're giving you suggestions. And so, which I think I can understand that, but we kind of did some design discussion around what are some solutions for the Healdsburg Avenue intersection, and that's something we're gonna. I know that report's going to be due fairly. It's got a quick turnaround time than the pavement report, so that'll be really interesting to see that, because I think it might help them inform a possible solution for that intersection. So I want to wait to see what they come up with and what they actually state. But what they shared with us, we were kind of using some Google Map type analysis to help inform what might be a solution there based on national highway transportation standards. And so really pretty interesting, Joe. I think it kind of fits in line with some of your thinking around how we might address some traffic safety improvements in that location. Really kind of the key, I think, is shortening the intersection. And there's some ways to do that, and also improve the visibility of that intersection. So we'll get the report. We'll obviously bring it back here, and you know, I'm hoping, because we've spent some time on that, that there will be some solid suggestions on how we can address that. And again, it's this I think fairly lucky to be able to be part of this effort. There's not, I think they said 8 cities, I think, are doing it. So we're one of 8, and you know, they decided to take us up on that effort, and you know, I think that the recommendations be really useful. Johannes joined us, and you know, we talked quite a bit about Osti at First Street and how the you know, the new proposed pedestrian bridge is going to tie in, how that's going to work. And so, you know, that design hasn't come out yet, but once we see that, we'll have to look at that carefully, how it's all going to interface with you know, that T intersection. Some suggestions there.
Good, maybe we can send it down to a CTA with you know, question from people. I know it doesn't hurt.
Well, the Office of Traffic Safety too is another good one, and lighting is really critical. So I think it's pretty dark, and they can start early. Pedestrians, both as well as the new housing, it's going to be critical, especially on First Street intersection under the overpass.
Right. Yeah, we talked a lot about the school children that walk from the east side of the river across the bridge, and how they interface with the bridge and traffic, and then have to make their way into downtown. So
it is, and with school buses minimal, in fact, they were non-existent when they stopped using them. That's the way the kids are in school, coming from the unincorporated into town. That's what really generated the safety, big red flag. Because you have a lot of rigs coming through there.
Yeah.
There's scooting 45, 50, and you have kids walking to school both ways. So it's a very serious situation. And I'm not sure, I know we still have, we have school buses, but I'm not sure. I don't think it's back at the level it was years ago, because they can't get drivers, and just different problems. So there's still a fair amount of pedestrian traffic.
We walked the whole thing, the whole team, and we gave them all our concerns, and I'm excited to see what they come up with.
It's going to be interesting, because that's going to really help as we make grant applications to get money as well.
yeah, and they actually talked about that. Yes. Of course, they also pointed out there's some other grant program or other programs you may want to participate, or other planning efforts to help you get that funding, but that'll be part of their report.
Yeah, and just I don't want to beat this up. I just want to make one comment. Vanessa did a fantastic job on the last grant. And I just want us, and I wish the chief was here, but if you could pass it on, when you see money, grant funding available, let's all kind of talk about different pieces, so we can get our localize it, get sync, get letters, get title, get that package goes out as strong as we can make it.
Sure.
Yeah, because it doesn't hurt to get these, you know, get a few phone calls from the senator's office, from the assemblyman's office, and others, just support for various key people. So, and that's really like I told you, if we know early enough, we can all do different pieces, compile it, get a strong package, and get it out. So I just wanted to emphasize that.
And Chair, I just want to note, our city manager's got another commitment with labor negotiations, so he's going to step out. Don't forget your phone.
Kevin, have they come back to the city as far as that project up there on Assey Road? Anything new on there? Did they do the property?
They submitted, that's in process, but they did submit for the TCAC funding. We didn't get notification. I don't know if they were awarded, but they let the city know who applied for, and that was one of them. So that was positive. Okay. See you guys.
All right, well, enjoy your meeting and we'll carry on here with Fourth Street reconstruction project. I know you had mentioned.
Vanessa, you wanna?
It's looking really good out there. I had one minor problem with the offset flag of concrete for the sidewalk. I don't want, our public works crew to have to go out there and put a little asphalt patch on new work. And so I need to go out there today and verify that they have ground it down appropriately. Assuming that they have, it looks good. We've got to get through a little bit of red tape. I'm missing some signatures on change orders and the next pay estimate coming through, but I would expect to see this as a notice of completion to council in June, possibly the June 8th meeting.
Now, did Regi get that bid?
It was Regi, correct, yes.
Yeah, so the project's pretty much ready to wrap up. It's really a punch list items. Just there was a few corrections, and I think they indicated they performed those. And Vanessa's going to conduct the final inspection, and then it's just
Final verify.
really it's really final paperwork. Make sure change orders were all addressed. Just as a reminder, there was the change order to do the additional water laterals, I think for what, 11 homes, I think it was?
I think initially it looked like 15 laterals.
Okay.
And that got scaled back a little bit, and then there was some other connections, nothing's easy.
At that same location.
Say, you're correct, 4th Street, yes.
Yeah.
And then sewer manhole lining.
And there is one piece to the project that will probably remain, I don't want to say incomplete, but in progress. So this was one of our first projects we performed that was subject to what's called the lid requirements, a low impact design. So you'll notice on the corners, there is drainage inlets with rock material in there. So the rock material, that helps with catching large sediment, and then there's an area that's above the rock material that's engineered soil. And what we are required to do to meet the intent of the lid requirements is to put plant material in there. We are coordinating, Hector's coordinating with a local vendor for the appropriate plant material. We're just trying to be sensitive as to the timing of placing it now, because we're moving into kind of the summer season, and there's no irrigation out there, so we want to try to just put it in where we have a little bit of leeway with the state water board when we can place that vegetation, but ultimately there will be some plant material that's included in that lid facility. The guiding concept is that the roots will help provide absorb some of the nutrients and other things that would normally be found in storm drainage, and help treat that pre-treatment before it enters the system. So that's not our contractor requirement. That's we put it in the bid package that we would perform that. So that's something that Hector will be doing probably after we get through the hot summer. So, but we know it's a requirement, and we will be doing it. It's just a little bit of timing before we actually put that plant material in there. But otherwise, I think it looks really nice.
Yeah, it does.
I wish we could have done a lot more, but it's a good example of a project and showing an area that was really deteriorated.
Well, Vanessa, I noticed on Franklin, there is a couple of red, like burlap cloths covering the drainage. What is that for? At that whole intersection?
So that's another state requirement. Anytime you're doing construction, you have to protect the storm drain from sediment.
It's quite a ways away from Fourth Street there. This is down past First, behind Jefferson.
That would be up to the design engineer. The design engineer puts that together. And so I can only imagine that, roadway drainage would go that way. And so it's got to be protected.
Okay. So if we're done with Fourth Street, and, I think that project moved pretty quick.
Just a comment, maybe in the newsletter, you can if you have before and after pictures,
Mhm.
it's kind of nice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I think it'd be nice to let people know that
We did the street.
well, and we're, we know there's a lot more that needs to be done, and we are looking at it as funds become available. And I think it's nice to point that out and show people that we accomplished something positive.
How about pedestrian safety in the corner of South Cloverdale Boulevard and Hillsborough?
Well, just a little bit on that, Chair. I think, and I'll confirm that our report will include recommendations for the treatment on that intersection. I think, we can, review those. We'll confirm it's going to be it's going to be a suggestion. If it's a suggestion, bring that forward and how, for your review, and then ultimately, if you support the recommendation or suggestion, and how we might implement that. I'll see too if there's any way to, because I think the solution that was discussed makes a lot of sense and can really work. So I'll see if we can bring that forward.
Okay.
And what was the timeline on that?
I think they were anticipating, within the next month of getting the report back to us.
That's such an important issue of that intersection.
Right.
And then we talked a little bit last meeting about the Office of Traffic Safety. And I did just went, one of the categories is pedestrian and bicycle safety, which I just printed out that page and I'll read it with you, but it talks about some of the things that they put high, their goals are. It talks about pedestrians killed or injured, pedestrians that are under 15, over 65, they have these categories.
Okay.
They talk about bicyclists injured or killed, motor vehicle accidents. All those are high things that they look at. Looking at the statistics from the police department, we kind of fit within that. I think we get some funding, at least make a strong request. And if we do grant, I'd like to be notified so we can reach out to some support. But I just wanted to point that out. You probably well aware of that, but that's just one of many categories. But, it's important to figure out when their funding cycle is, so we can kind of target our plan to submit before that session.
Okay, anything else on that intersection? If not, why don't we discuss the street safety assessment?
Okay. Well, we conducted the safety assessment on Thursday of last week. The tour started at about, we started with an in-house review at about 9:30. We were out on the street by about 10:30, and we concluded by about 1 o'clock, where we walked down First Street, Oste's, Citrus Fair, and then back down to downtown. Came back in, kind of did a debrief on what we saw, a summary of the key issues, and again, they identified that the next step is really to write that up and prepare a report for us. So there was a general indication of when we could expect it, but no specific exact date. And again, this effort was funded through the Office of Traffic Safety. That UC Berkeley prepared the application. We got to be included as a city in that effort. So again, it's they used a professional engineering traffic engineering firm, Fair and Peers, which is a pretty well respected engineering firm that does a lot of traffic safety work in the Bay Area. And so I expect the report to be very highly professional. A smart planner joined us, and it was kind of helpful. So they could they talked a lot about that. They talked about these things, but actually to see it in person, and of course, indicate our interest in understanding what their planned use is for the smart corridor, located north of the station, and whether that's part of any of their rail plans, and whether there's any opportunities for us to maybe to collaborate either on grant applications or even using some of that smart right of way. I expressed that I think it would be really interesting to have a dedicated trail along that section. So that way,
Just the first.
yeah, from Citrus to First along that, so that it was actually separated from the road, for kind of maximum traffic safety or pedestrian safety. So at least pitch that idea with Smart and see if there's we can get their support for that, because and then obviously with the budget we're gonna adoption will have funding to initiate a planning effort for that section so that we can really come up with a design that we can use for grant applications. That's kind of the plan.
So, Mr. Chair, did the representative from Smart give you indication when we look back based on the tour requests from the city as to, in other words, I would like to make sure that we get a follow-up. Yes, let's sit down and draw something up or we're not interested or whatever.
Yeah.
So we know.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't. I think the staff member maybe wasn't have the requisite authority to.
No, I wouldn't expect it. No, I'm saying a follow-up.
Sure.
Now that they viewed it, they're there, they heard you, go back to whoever they need to talk about it and report back so we know what their next steps are.
And there was that commitment to bring it back to the office and have that discussion. So I'll follow up. And
yeah, if you could, and maybe we can keep this on for a follow-up discussion. I'd like to, what they're thinking.
Sure. I think once we get the study too, that maybe I'm hoping that today reflects that discussion point about having that more of a class 1 type bike facility and why that would be safer for pedestrians. I hope that's included in the report, but if it's not, that's certainly fine too. But that'll give us some standing, I guess.
Sure.
Well, moving on to number 8, standing items, A through P. David, I don't think I need an update on all of these, but Councilmember Paul, if there's any in particular, I do have 1 or 2, but David, if you could just go down the list and anything that's changed, otherwise just do it.
Right. Well, I'd like to provide our interim city engineer the opportunity to provide an update on the work that she's engaged in with item 8H. This is a repair of asphalt on East 2nd Street and kind of an addition that we are working on that would also help address a similar issue with asphalt in a different location. So, Nessie, you want to take it away?
This is a very small project. The East 2nd Street project is relatively small. And, everything kind of, the timing of things is always interesting, but some recent public complaints about Vista View have sort of come to the forefront, and deterioration on Vista View is major. I would love to overlay that whole street, but it's very expensive to do asphalt work. At a minimum, we're looking at, I believe it's address 210 Vista View, but it's the first major curve as you're heading up that hill. It's severely deteriorating. And so I was out there earlier today. I marked an area to engage the contractor for a price to potentially add that into the project. Since we put the East 2nd Street project out to informal bid, we had 2 bidders on that. Regi was the low bid at just over 10K. And so, there's, a little bit of dollars up to the purchasing authority to add a little bit more work. City attorney has advised that we really need to give the second bidder an option, at least, outreach to the second bidder to see if he's interested in bidding the project. And if he's not, I'm going to go ahead and add that potentially to Regi's contract. And so it's marked. My next steps are to engage the second bidder and, see what their response is, and move forward either with another kind of an informal bid, or if the second bidder is not interested, get a quote from Regi and potentially lump those into the same contract with Regi for that work.
Yes, I think we're-
Initiative and do it.
And they want to do it. They want to do it yesterday. Or we want to do it yesterday. And so, we're just kind of wading through the red tape here, but it's pretty minimal. And I expect these to be done by the end of the fiscal year. Would be great.
Anything else on that list that you'd like to address?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to, a couple of them, I'd like to just give a quick update on Adb, the pickleball installation. I know we approved that, and what's the plan to actually start it?
Right, well, we've actually executed the contract with the prime bidder for the asphalt work for the court. That's Anderson. And our expected start date is mid-July approximately. We don't have an exact date, but they were, that firm was fairly well committed with work, but so early July is really what we're targeting to start the, obviously there'll be an excavation exercise and then backfill and then asphalt work. So that'll be kind of the first major phase. So that's, we've done the initial paperwork to start that effort.
That's good. And then on 8C, if I could, the restroom project, is that all set to start right after the Friday Night Lights?
That's exactly the plan. Mo Engineering, who was on earlier, John Mo, is still finalizing the construction plans for the underground work. In the meantime, we've paid the deposit for the packaged restrooms from the restroom company, based on the feedback that we received and kind of the final specs for that. So everything's pretty much in progress. There's been a calendar developed so that we're timing it where the bids go out, receive bids, award bid, and be able to do that work. Starting with the completion of Friday Night Live. Our goal will be to try to get that timing dialed in as best we can. We've been trying also just to minimize what impacts there are going to be, with the plaza. Looking at can we utilize there is a meter there, and how we place a new, can we use that? And so we're just trying to kind of fine tune the specs at this point.
So just to clarify, I know we talked about moving it into the existing. You were going to look at that.
Yeah, we need to.
Where are we at on that?
I think we need to conduct. I think if it's okay with this subcommittee, maybe informally do a site visit and just take a look at it. I know that where Hector's identified, it would go. I think the thought is it would be an ideal spot, but want to get the perspective. And now would be a good time because the trailer is there for Friday Night Live, and you kind of see and kind of the space issues and things like that. So maybe Chair, when you have time, we just go out and take a look at it. Take a look at it. Because Hector's went out, he's done the measurements and he's got it kind of laid out. And so if he wants to take a look at it. So Hector, you're there. Anything you want to, any updates you want to share with the subcommittee?
Hector, if you're speaking, we're not able to hear you right now. It looks like your mic might have to reconnect it. Showing that it's there, but we're not hearing anything.
Well, why don't we come back to that?
Okay.
I'm sorry, Joe, you have the one?
Well, I have a couple more. Okay, good. Just write down that list for 8D, the update on ARPA fund spending plan. When do you see us maybe initiate a discussion on that, taking into consideration the a lot of CIP items that were on the original list. This grant is going to really move some of those projects forward.
Well, my recommendation on that, council member.
Just to finish my thought.
Oh, yeah.
Because we talked about reimbursement. We talked about the need to have funding to move the project. Is it conceivable that we maybe start looking at using this, it's all water related, moving this to move this project forward as the funding comes back in, replenish the short term, make it happen, we have money in the bank from the ARPA to get this thing moving sooner than later. So the reimbursement things like that, just throw that out, something to think about. But in other words, plan. So we start really moving it forward. And obviously we'll be looking at long-term plan when the reimbursement goes in. What new projects are we going to do in the water area, sewer, those with this reimbursement money? So we kind of we get this thing moving. Yes, that's what I'm looking at.
It's kind of follow the ARPA money to get it moving.
It's all related. It's all related to what the goal is. That's the water projects and sewer and.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think we should take the opportunity to kind of relook at the original allocation that was approved by council to see if there's any interest in kind of how those funds were allocated, and particularly in light of the fact that they are right now they're parked in our general fund. It may even be something that could be advantageous to consider a, I think the way it was being viewed is a financial contribution to your water enterprise. It could be done through, for instance, a loan that could be, subject to some long-term payback, or, a way that could benefit the general fund in some way down the road. So I realize that has its own issues, and we want to look at that, but there may be, again, some beneficial ways that for us to at least evaluate to see if there's some opportunities to benefit the general fund, but also accomplish what we intended to do with paying down some of the projects. And so that would be something I think we could look at more carefully. And I think what we want to do with the help of the interim city engineer is finalize our expenditure plan, our project timeline for the grant, really dial that in so that you have that to look at in conjunction with this ARPA spending plan, so we can, mirror the two, and then, or at least have those two, so you can decide if, there's an alternative to using the ARPA funds for other purposes, or how you might want to use them for water infrastructure. Kind of really mirror the two.
I'd just like to encourage you and the staff to really take a hard look at it. And I think the objective is to move it sooner than later. We're talking about water conservation, different loss of water. I mean, they're all, it's just the longer we wait, the harder it is. The sooner we kind of come up with a strategy and we can move it sooner, get these things in place, recognizing this is an expenditure. I like the word loan out of the general fund, using the monies we got, but the reimbursement side or the revenue side will come back to replenish it. So we can just make it happen sooner by showing that string. And it's got to be thought out after shooting out an idea, but really laying out so we systematically start. We have the money, order X. This is what we got the contractors lined up. This is the plan. Move. Reimbursements coming in. We're moving to the next step. And we get this thing moving. So in 4 years, it's done. It's totally done.
It totally makes sense to me, and I keep pushing for things to get done quickly, because at the end of the year, we're going to have 3 new council members. And who knows if we're going to have not already committed this ARPA money, they're not going to have, it would be a bad idea, because I'm completely use that. as opposed to the current philosophy of the city council now seems to be, this is one-time money, infrastructure, you know, fixes, not ongoing expenses.
But I would really welcome having you guys, after you lay it all out, come back to us with a suggested plan using the ARPA money, because that's really what this current council dedicated it towards the CIP program with the emphasis on water infrastructure. And now that the grant is approved, that really opens it up even better, so we can go back and reevaluate it. But with the thought of continuing to think what we want to get done in the city, but we get started sooner, that we have money to do it, move it as the grant reimbursement comes back. That money is non-committed. We can start looking at least a part of it, because we don't have $3 billion in ARPA, but we have well over $1 million at least get. And as the money comes in at the end of the 4-year cycle, we should still have $1 million sitting there with all the reimbursements that comes back. So I would welcome that. Because if you take it to the council, I guarantee you got 5 different ideas, and you can probably walk out there and say, well, that was, nothing's been accomplished, move on. Anyway, that's my thoughts. So, okay, and then the last one I wanted, at least for now, is on the Treadway, that intersection. I know you signed the contract and went out to do the work. Do we have a timeline on getting that for the left turn flashing yellow?
Yeah, I don't have a date certain. It is being programmed, and I'll try to refine the estimated timeline for that, because we're now into about 4 weeks since executed the work order for that work, and I think it was about 8 to 10 for completion. So I'll just check to see where we're at on that. I don't have a specific time.
And you might let them know, you know, we're going to be seeing a lot more traffic in town. The Friday Night Live series starting, there's a lot more things. So it's really important to try to get this thing in place.
And then I was interested in item number G, with the yield sign on Sonoma Drive, and then the no parking sign on 4th Street. We took care of that by extending the red striping, so we could probably eliminate that. And then a stop sign on Champlain and North Jefferson. So I'm not sure where we are with that.
Yeah, we.
G, I'm sorry, is that G?
Yeah, and we did with crews paint red curbs, and I received actually a nice email from a resident expressing their thanks for that. So I want to thank Vanessa and Craig for their work doing that, getting that red curb painted. I think my recollection on G3 was, was the decision was kind of to not move forward with that at this time. I did receive a ping on the yield sign, and that's, I guess, but we also received some resident concerns that a yield sign, that there was some potential safety concerns around that yield sign. And I think it was an area that we could just have you take a look at it, and we've kind of put a final recommendation on whether it's something we move forward with, or say, at this point, keep it as a stop sign.
That I think the recommendation is to keep it as a stop sign.
Okay.
I think, I understand the desire for a yield sign, but it doesn't seem that was a, neighborhood-wide opinion. And so we did have a contrary opinion that it's already people blowing through the stop sign.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's keep it a stop sign, because that could just exacerbate the situation.
Well, then I think we need to yank G off of the update, but we also need to get back to that individual on Sonoma Drive and let them know that request, but we're going to need the stop sign.
Okay.
And then on Champlain, the same thing.
That the city engineer.
Yeah.
reviewed. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
More detailed. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
And then if that could be really cemented in the minutes, Michael, then we'll know 6 months from now, we go back to look what exactly. we did.
So, and I got one thing I just, the messing around, if you read my sketch here, but this is a Muscat Street, and this is Franklin, and this is a crosswalk, the school's over here. There's a truck or a vehicle that parks there almost every night. And especially when there are games, it's almost impossible to kind of get out here to see. And people, going that way, and it's really, really difficult. And I really think it should be for zone to keep that visibility open. But if you could just take a look at that, it's really dangerous, especially since there's a school and the crosswalks right there. The crosswalks obstructed by the vehicle parks there.
We had similar concern on the other side, where it comes out of Times Square, condos there. Right along the fence, there was a Comcast truck, remember, they're parked right there. When people were coming out, they couldn't see around it. And I forget how we settled that, I think. Anyhow, so.
I'll look into that.
Thank you so much.
Are we gonna, does this get added to the agenda for next time? To
I
remind
don't-
me to
unless
talk
you-
about it?
I don't think so. No,
Okay.
I think I just wanted to pass it on. to
Okay,
you.
sure.
Anything else, Joe? Because
No, I think, like the First Street Crossing Bridge, we could, that's moving, right? That's done. I mean, the work isn't, but it's all approved.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to the committee if you want to just leave it here for periodic updates, and it's just when progress is made, we can report out on that.
Okay.
If there's nothing to report, we'll just say nothing to report.
the rule of 20, we're not going to lose that money. Right?
No, not at this time.
Any future agenda items?
1 second, Chair. It looks like Hector's trying to.
Okay.
Hi, Vice Mayor, Councilmember Joe Paula. My apologies for the earlier, but I'm having some computer, some internet challenges here, so I switched over to my iPad. And I just wanted to touch on the public restroom there at the plaza. I went out there a couple of times and took my tape measure out there and see if we could move the restrooms back a little further back. I think the best thing to do is to perhaps, maybe David probably already covered it, but perhaps maybe schedule a site visit to the site. There's a couple challenging obstacles there. There's the Cloverdale Creek that runs directly behind where we're proposing to put the restrooms, and some other utilities. Some other utilities there that we have there, but I think a site visit would be the best solution.
Well, I'm going to swing by there right after the meeting tonight and just take a look at it. But, I'm not about to argue with, on underground electric and causing a whole big problem. But, my thought was if we could just push it back a little bit onto the parking lot, it wouldn't be so close to the stage. And, Mark Tharrington suggested we push it back a little more. But I did talk to him before he made that statement. But I'm just concerned that it's just going to be too noisy for the folks that are driving.
Well, Chair, if you're okay, I know Hector's going to be wrapping up his day pretty soon here. But maybe when another time's convenient, he can go out and he can bring his tape measure and actually kind of show you the dimensions and how it lays out. Because when we looked at it, we thought, wow, this really, I think, you get a good feel. It's actually a decent distance back from the back of the stage, but I think it'll be important for you to take a look at it, kind of see how it is.
Sorry.
You could facilitate the date.
Yeah. we'll do it quickly.
Any future agenda items? I think that's a bad for me. Then I guess if there's nothing else good to the order, we can go ahead and adjourn. Okay.
All right. 3:20.
Hector, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.
So